I want to bring in a couple of people who know Nikki Haley and South Carolina politics really well. Today's show co-host and South Carolina native Craig Melvin and former South Carolina Governor Mark Sanford. Guys, thanks for jumping on with us here. Craig, you've interviewed Nikki Haley multiple times, including just recently, just a few weeks ago. So as you hear her message today, as she bows out of the presidential race, what goes through your mind?
That was hard for her, really hard for her. I've known the former ambassador and governor for 20 years since she served in the state legislature there in South Carolina. Until now, Nikki Haley had never lost a race, to be fair, which is quite the feat for a woman in South Carolina politics. But the reality was, when I talked to her a few weeks ago down in Charleston, she had all but acknowledged it was going to be a steep climb. There was a hope that last night she would have performed a little bit better in Virginia. But if you look at how well she did with suburban women, if you look at how well she did with independent voters this primary, there are still a lot of Republican voters who don't like the idea of Donald Trump being the nominee. And she knew that. That's what prompted her to get in the race. And I think ultimately that's what she thought would help her. What's going to be very interesting is the role that she plays over the next few months leading up until the election in November. Or does she play a role at all? I mean, is this going to be a situation where, as some have predicted this morning, at some point she falls in line, or does she become another Trumper? And I think it is telling that she didn't endorse this morning. If you listen, you pointed this out, if you listen to the language that she used this morning, she basically said, at some point, perhaps I'll consider endorsing if Donald Trump does this. And I think that's very interesting. Here's what's not going to happen. If Donald Trump is reelected, she's not going to serve in the administration. She's not going to help as president. She made that abundantly clear. And I think if you also look at the language that she started to use, especially over the last month or two, she was more critical of Donald Trump than at any point she had been in her political career. And some have suggested that perhaps if she had been that aggressive with some of the language 6 months ago, maybe we're not having this conversation right now.
You know, and I want to point back to something that she told you just a couple of weeks ago when you spoke with her. This is what she said about Trump back then. Take a listen.
The problem now is he is not the same person he was in 2016. He is unhinged. He is more diminished than he was.
Unhinged and more diminished.
I mean, she all but called the former president a basket case, and that's not what you would have never heard Nikki Haley say that 3 months ago. And I think the hope was politically that kind of language, that kind of rhetoric, ratcheting it up a bit, might help her. And I think she found the opposite to be true, because the reality is, and we've talked about the polling that shows this. Yes, there are a slew of Americans that have legitimate concerns about President Biden's age. I mean, Donald Trump isn't that much younger, but for whatever reason, a slew of Americans have just accepted that. It's baked in. And I think that she thought she could move the needle there, and she was never able to do it. But Jose, it was, for me at least, striking to hear her be so openly critical when she had been for years very careful about what she said about the former president. But if you recall, even before she became ambassador, she was somewhat critical. I mean, but it's
even as ambassador, when she served within the Trump administration, she was somebody who didn't always fall right in line.
She pointed that out, and in fact, that was one of the central theses of her book as well. But it's fascinating. It really is on so many levels. And now we're all bracing for what is going to be the longest presidential general election in American history. In American history, we've never had a general election that's this long.
And so it begins, Craig.
Long, strange general election campaign. Craig Melvin, it's good to see you, buddy.
Good to see Mark Sanford, by the way, as well. Governor, haven't seen you in ages. How you doing? You look good.
Other way around. It's good to hear your voice, Craig. Long time.
Craig, we know you got a job. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Andrea?
And Governor Mark Sanford, let's pick it up there. So what did this race reveal about Nikki Haley's brand of Republican politics? Where does she fit into the Republican Party? Where do you fit into the Republican Party? And also wanted to just flag that Joe Biden on Twitter, on X, saying, you don't have to agree with me on everything to know that MAGA extremism is a threat to this country. And what he's done is retweet a copy link to a Donald Trump tweet where he went after Nikki Birdbrain Haley. So he is already reaching out to the Haley voters.
In a very strange way. I'd say a couple of different things. I'd say I'd take humble exception with Craig in that I would argue, her comment that, Trump has suddenly become unhinged is not accurate. I mean, I think he's been the same guy throughout. The four of us who spoke out early against Trump are all gone on the Republican side. So Corker and Flake in the Senate and me and Amash in the House, gone. It's extinction. So, I think that she's always played within the crayon lines, if you want to call it that, with regard to political relevancy. And so, when back in one of the early debates, would you support Trump if he's convicted, not indicted, but convicted? Hers was one of the hands that went up, because I think she knew at that time, and I think she's consistently done that with the exception of maybe the last month or so, that I can't go too hard against the base, can't go too hard against him. And so while she has stepped away from that, I would argue that she'll still play within the crayon lines and will come back to fold, and that she'll end up endorsing Trump, because to not do so risks the political extinction that me and Ken Singer and go down the list have seen, and I don't think she wants to play that game, given the voice she wants to have within the Republican Party.
So you think she'll endorse Trump, even though just days ago on Meet the Press, she said she's no longer committed to endorsing Trump if he became the nominee. And here we are. Now he is the presumptive nominee. Well, you think she may come around to endorsing him for her own political future. My question is, what kind of influence does she even have? What would an endorsement actually mean when it comes to giving Trump more supporters?
I don't think it means a lot. I think it's a kiss to the ring, and it keeps you relevant for possible future runs. I think what's particularly interesting is the way that the Republican Party is in flux. I think that if you look at the suburban voters last night, increasingly well-educated and of more means is shifting to the Democratic side. And you can see it with some of the black votes. I mean, almost a quarter in some cases, some of the Hispanic votes, rising numbers there, so that the Republican Party, oddly, is becoming the party of folks of lesser means, and the Democratic Party, in some cases, particularly the suburbs, is becoming of greater means. I think that a lot of the Haley supporters were Democratic votes who just can't stand Trump, and there was no other place to go. It wasn't a competitive race on the Democratic side, and it was a protest vote. So I don't know that it means a lot, other than a chance to stay in the arena, which I think would be important to the Haley campaign going forward.
And just thinking about that tactic of not taking Trump on directly in these primaries, you can see that was what DeSantis followed, Scott followed, so many other people followed, and they are out of it. Nikki Haley now being out of it. Do you think that she does have a future, Governor, in a post? I guess we're still in the Trump era. So, I mean, does she have a future in the Trump Republican era?
No. I think within the Trump era, it's a one-person rocket ship, and he's it. And everybody else is sort of rocket fuel or spent rocket fuel. I do think, though, age matters, and, Trump isn't going to live forever. She's young, in her early 50s. And I think we're going to have a huge debate within the Republican Party as to where we go next after Trump is gone. Are we going to continue this sort of MAGA movement, or are we going to come back to some of the things that the Republican Party and the conservative movement once stood for? That's going to be a giant debate, but it's not taking place at this time, as we have, I would argue, a cult of personality that's locked in around Trump. I mean, the operative question in my last race was, are you for or against Trump, period? Not issues, not themes, not ideas, not conservative things that I talked to these folks with for 20 years. It was, are you for or against Trump? And that's still the question, unfortunately.
Former South Carolina Governor Mark Sanford, thank you so much for taking the time and